So, good evening everybody. My name is Peter Mozeleius, and I'm not only from a different continent. I think my presentation is a bit different, and maybe that is bad, because it would have been very nice to go on aligned with what you have presented. And actually my previous research paper, which I presented 1.5 months ago in Athens, was about online assessment in the distance education. But this is something different, and I think it's good, because you have said so many wise things about assessment of learning. So this is more about assessment of a system, but it's a system for learning objects, a learning object repository. And the migration here is that we have developed this from the beginning in your neighbor country here in Sri Lanka. But we have brought it first to Finland and then to Sweden. And after a lot of testing now and the results that I will present, I think sometime next year we will make a new version and bring it back to Sri Lanka. And I think that when it comes to assessment of learning is difficult. It's many things to think about. But I think to assess a system, it's much easier. And I think the way to do it, and what we discussed during the break here, is that international collaboration. So I am from Sweden. Amit Roy, I don't know if he's here. I think he's out. Oh, there he is. He is from India, but he is doing his PhD in the University of Eastern Finland. And Jarkko Suonen is also from University of Eastern Finland. And Enosha Heitarachi, she is from Sri Lanka. So it has been Swedish and Finnish people, Swedish and Sri Lankan people that has developed the system, and then we have had Indian and Finnish testing. I think that is a wonderful international collaboration. And someone asked that why do you go to conferences in India? I think that, and what we discussed also during lunch here, that this is what we should have in the future, more international collaboration. And we will have different aspects of an assessment of systems will be much better if we test them in several places. So maybe I jump to conclusions on the very first slide. So maybe it's better to start to tell you a little bit about the system. The system is Enosha. Enosha is the girl that has been working with the programming and the design. And this was done at the University of Colombo School of Computing in Sri Lanka, because they are very much into e-learning. They produce so many learning objects. And after some years of this very intense production, they didn't know where the things were anymore. Some server there, some server in another place, and they couldn't find the things anymore. So in a Swedish-Sri Lankan project, we developed this system. Took quite a while. But the question for this paper, we wanted to test the context independency. And how would it work in Finland? How angry would it make people there? And what would be the problems in Sweden, even if it had been Swedish people involved in the design? So we've been looking for context dependency and usability and user-friendliness. And where I might be a bit provoking, otherwise quite nice, is that I call some issues that sometimes are classified as context dependency, I see them as usability and user-friendliness. Because my experience of being in Sri Lanka and India is that as human beings we are quite alike, and there is not so big differences, especially not at university level. Then we have this boring stuff with installation and security issues. I will say something about them as well. But the thing to keep the storage to be context independent is that we have built our system to store things on 4 aggregation levels. So you can at the same time be context independent and dependent, which is a trend now, that you should have more longer sequences of learning and not only to store, well, if you start here, in our system, you can store atoms, which are things like an image, a text file, or a sound file. And then you put it together as collection of atoms. That is an exercise or a small lesson or something. and then you have course modules or course sections, and then you have full courses. So the idea is to store learning objects on all these 4 levels. And then it's up to the subject matter experts and the instructional designers to reuse what they think is useful for the actual context. Very briefly about the architecture, that it's built in different modules to get it stable and robust before we move it anywhere. And if I should say something about assessment, I think we have also the rating system. So when people use this system to download and test learning objects that have been developed somewhere else, they can rate them and recommend this is good for this and it's bad for that and stuff. If you're interested in software development and technical details, the full paper is available. I think it would be very boring, and I will exceed my time slot if I went through all the details. So I go on. But what is the point to have a repository? You heard earlier that there was a repository built here in Gujarat to store all the diplomas and things. I think you store things for different reasons, and in digital libraries now, I think, or whatever, wherever you store things, that searchability is the thing. And it's also the dilemma that the metadata set, how should you mark your objects to be able to find them? And how we did it was a result of a needs analysis at the University of Colombo. And it's derived from the LOM standard and frequently used in the SCORM standard. And the reason is that what is common for our three countries, Sweden, Finland, and Sri Lanka, is that we use the Moodle system as the virtual learning environment. But what remains as the dilemma here is that if you don't provide learning objects with metadata, you will not be able to search for them. And if you provide a lot of metadata, it will bring down the usability, because no one wants to fill in all this metadata set when they use the system. And that is it's the same thing in Sri Lanka, in Finland, in Sweden. And you're welcome to use this system because it's open source, it's free. If you want to try it, I give you the link where you can download it. But to fill in metadata has not been popular in any country so far, so I would be very surprised if we find some place where this is the case. We can also offer this for the Moodle integration, which we spend a lot of time working with. So it's integrated with Moodle 1.9. But what happens this week or next week is that Moodle 2.2 will be released. And there they, for some reason, have rebuilt the file system. So our integration doesn't work for the new version of Moodle. On the other hand, we will fix that next year. So I will offer 2 different versions of the system. But the aim of the study then was to test, evaluate, and discuss the context independency of the Enosha Learning Object Repository and suggest how the system could be updated and made more user-friendly for a global use in different kind of organizations. And I think this really, we found it to be important, because if you build a system somewhere and don't care about other users, no one will use it. So the testing has been done in Finland and at the University of Stockholm. And outcomes of the study then, and maybe some people will disagree with me here, but we didn't find so many cultural differences, because I think if you like me have spent the last 20 years in front of a computer, you have a way of working with software. And I think if you've done that in Sweden, or if you've done it in India here, or in some other country, I think we are used to software. You can discuss if it's a healthy life to be so many times in front of a computer, but I think it's not so many differences there. And of course, that languages, local language is an issue, but this system is written in English. Even if you can store learning objects in all languages, and you can mark them in different languages. But the only complaints there was that some people found the Sri Lankan accent on the English in the tutorial videos to be a bit peculiar. But for me, this is not a big thing. This was main issues, that the installation process was so complicated. And we presented the first version of this system at E-India in Hyderabad in 2009. And then we said to everyone, this is a fantastic system. It's very user-friendly. We give it to all of you. And people were interested. But then we see that they didn't really use the system. And I think this was our failure, that the installation process was too complicated. And also that we hadn't taken care of the security problems. But there was a big difference between Sri Lanka, that they keep the systems quite open, but in Finland, security is first. So they were very concerned about that it was an unsecure system. They were a bit negative there. But I think the challenges and opportunities for the future is to create a new, more user-friendly and more platform-independent installation script. Because in Finland we tested in Solaris Unix and different Unix versions, and there were differences. And in the future we promised that we should have a much better solution here. And I think to update the default level for security, because security is important as well. And the very last time before my time is running out there is that we will update everything here for a new version 1.7, which we will offer to all of you. And also there will come a new version 2.2 that will be integrated with Moodle 2.2. Thank you so much.